Namaskar. After a poetic and mystical introduction by way of the introductory verses or Mangala shlokas, we are finally coming to the first sutra. When approaching such a mystical text, I want to draw attention to the most essential requirements for understanding. One is spiritual and the other linguistic. It is a truism that a spiritual or mystical text can only be received if the reader or listener has some spiritual practice or experience. It is just like a scientific text can be understood only by somebody who has some experience with science. This is the whole question of hermeneutics, where the tool has to correspond to the subject. The other condition for understanding is the language. It's not only a question of knowing Sanskrit, but of having access to the specific meaning in the context of, for example, yoga or tantra, where the words have a different meaning than in the dictionary. Here, the tradition is necessary, whether through a commentary or through an oral transmission from a guru. After these preliminary remarks, let us come to Sutra 1. Mahasahasavritya Svarupa Labhaha. First I read my own translation, and then we come to each word of this sutra. My translation: by the mode of great intensity, one attains one's true nature. Or an alternative translation also from me: by the operation of the great suddenness, one's essential being is attained. And in the translation of the Mangala, where it is called Sahasavara, the excellent Sahasa, I had also translated it as sudden inspiration. Now, it is well known in the Indian tradition that a sutra can have many different meanings, even opposite ones. And Abhinavagupta says in the commentary to the Bharatishika Tantra, a sutra can have infinite meanings. Now this is the case here, where even the living Acharya of the tradition until last century, Swami Lakshmanju, he did not accept the commentary by Ananta Shaktipada, and he had his own interpretation from the commentary. And I accept both. And we will go into a little bit in the difference of the interpretation. Now, the richness of a meaning of a sutra is precisely contained in these multiple interpretations and meanings. Now, let us consider every word of this sutra before coming back to the translation and commentary. Sahasa. We have already encountered it where I translated it as sudden inspiration. Now, the meanings derived from the adjective sahas are suddenness, immediacy, the unexpected, unpredictable, the powerful. Maha, of course, it just raises it to the supreme transcendent level. The interpretation varies whether these qualities are attributed to the divine or to the absolute, or to the practitioner or to the yogi. And this is very interesting because, for example, Swami Lakshmanju, he attributes it to the yogi and he calls it great courage. So the yogi or the practitioner must have great courage to discover or to realize his own nature. But The other interpreters understand it as an attribute to the divine. The divine, it is not called like that, but that suddenness which comes from an act, as you will see in the commentary, in an act of grace, of Shaktipata. Now, I have preferred the word intensity because it is neutral and it can apply to both the absolute and the practitioner. Because our intensity has to correspond to the divine. Now, vritti is a very crucial word here to understand. It has so many meanings. Of course, we know from the Yoga Sutra, Chitta Vritti is the movements of the mind. But the meanings are, for example, can be an attitude, a state, a condition, an action, a movement, a function, an operation, a cause, or a mode. It's one of these Sanskrit words which can have so many applications. Now, I have understood vritti in the sense of a mode. A mode, like a mode of operation, like we have it in the computer, also different modes, but also a condition or a state. Some of the interpreters and translators have taken it to mean a state. The interesting thing is that is where Sanskrit is so wonderful for these multiple meanings, that it is both a movement and a state, both dynamic and static. It is not one or the other. Now the compound is Mahasahasa Vritya Svarupalapa. Mahasahasa Vritya is an instrumental, that through which one attains one's true nature. Now what means Svarupa? Those who, of course, Svarupa is a term which is used in the whole of Kashmir Shaivism for the true essential nature. Whereas Sahasa has not been used in any important meaning in Kashmir Shaivism in other texts. In the Tantra Loka, Abhinavagupta gives the briefest definition of moksha, liberation. Says what is moksha? Svarupa pratana. It is the unfolding of one's true nature. This unfolding or revelation or expansion of the true nature. And I find this is such an extraordinary universal definition of moksha. It does not say about Shiva, Vishnu or Devi or anything, but your own true being, your own true nature. And Swami Lakshmanchu in his commentary says truly that we are mostly not living in our true nature, we are far away from it. Now this attainment, Svarupa Labha, attainment does not mean to get something which we do not have. Attainment means to become what we truly are. And it is not an acquisition of something, but it is, as in the definition of Abhinavagupta, it is the unfoldment of our true being, of our true nature. And of course, in the whole context of the philosophy of recognition, it is a matter only of recognition and not of acquiring something which we are not. Now, we come back to the commentary, to the sutra and to the commentary. Commentary by Ananta Shaktipada. Attaining one's true nature can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime, suddenly, unexpectedly. When one is absorbed in one's very own essence by an excessively powerful unfettered descent of grace, Shaktipada, by the mode of great intensity or subtleness. It's such a universal statement. It is not depending on any condition. And that is why subtleness and unexpectedness is a quality of that, which we don't name otherwise, except Anuttara vielleicht. Continue with the commentary. It is attained by the full expansion of the all-absorbing supreme sound, Paranada, being established in an absorption in the great void, Mahashunyata, Sabhavesha, which is unobstructed due to the unification of all thoughtful and thought-free processes of consciousness. Now this great supreme sound, the later sutras and will speak about the levels of the word and the sound, that mystical sound, and we also call anahatanada, the mystical sound, that will be developed in the sutras later on. But it is connected with that attainment of one's true nature and entering, being absorbed in that great voidness. Continue the translation. It is by transcending all conceptions or imaginations that one attains the consciousness which is non-artificial, without any occasion, unsurpassed, free from fluctuations, boundless, without distinctive sign, untouched, means untouched by anything outside. This is the secret meaning of the sutra. Secret meaning, rahasyartha. Now it is clear here that this Svarupa, which is attained by, means by, through that great intensity, it is the pure consciousness. And pure consciousness which is non-artificial. It is a translation of akritrika. And that means not something made, not something imagined or created either by thought or by anything else. That is the real attribute of the pure consciousness and that true nature, Svarupa. Now, this is the commentary by Ananta Shaktipada, and then he ends by saying, penetration in the true nature by the mode of the great intensity or suddenness will be taught with the process leading to it. That he introduces the following sutras. Like in practically all sutra texts which stand at the beginning of a school, like Brahma Sutra, Yoga Sutra, Shiva Sutra, the first sutra contains the whole teaching in a nutshell. And the following sutras go into the process and the details. Therefore, this is a very powerful beginning, summing up the experience that will be unfolded and the sequel. Not to forget, a sutra is also a basis for meditation.